Hi guys, welcome to another episode of Rock Bottom Airsoft. It's good to see you again. If it's your first time here, then as always, it is good to see you and I hope you're going to stick around. Well, welcome to our midweek video. As you can probably see, unfortunately, I am still injured, and so our midweek video that's normally a gameplay video this week again is going to be one of our studio videos, which we do every weekend and normally have gameplay midweek. So in these videos, as you probably know if you follow the channel, we always discuss all things airsoft, hints, tips, tech, gear reviews, replica reviews, everything in between, all that kind of thing. So if you have been watching the channel and enjoying it, then please do subscribe to the channel, that way you won't miss any of my uploads. And as always, if you like this video, then do drop a like on it at the end, or if you have any comments about it or any comments for me, then do drop a comment below. I always respond to comments. Might not get back to you straight away, but I will get back to you. Okay, so with that quickly out of the way, what are we going to look at today? Well, I know I keep banging on about this, and I did a longer video previously, which I'll link in the description, which was all about curing for Lipo batteries, or lithium polymer batteries in airsoft, and how to correctly charge them. And that was quite a lengthy video. So what I thought I'd do today, because I recently paid a visit to my home site Tazball Airsoft. Obviously I can't play, but I wanted to go up and say hello to everybody and make sure nobody's forgotten me. So when I was up there, I noticed again that there was a number of Lipo batteries that were puffed up and damaged and really not suitable for use, not safe for use anymore. So I thought today we'd do a quicker video just to get it through there. Really, I don't want to see any of you getting hurt, and I don't want to see any of you having damage to your property. I don't want your replicas getting burnt up, and I don't want your houses getting burnt down because of bad Lipo care. So today we're going to do do's and don'ts of Lipo batteries. So what do we need first of all if we're going to be using Lipos, and we're seriously going to be using Lipos, and honestly there's no reason not to use Lipos. There's a lot of fear mongering goes around, but if you care for them, they're a superb battery. They put out a lot of power in a very small package. So if you're going to properly care for your Lipo batteries, then one thing that you'll need, which is very important for when you're charging, is a Lipo bag. This is the base level of protection that you want for your Lipos when they're on charge, when you're transporting them, when you're storing them. And basically it's just a sack that you put the Lipo in. Can't hold a lot of Lipos, this really, probably only one. And the sack should mitigate the effects of burning if one of these does go bad and decide it's going to vent and burn all over the place. This should contain the fire somewhat. It's better than nothing. The best option you can have is a Lipo safe. Do a bit of research online, you'll see that in the RC world there's loads of different devices for keeping your Lipos safe. You also want something like that as well as for charging. You must put them in a Lipo sack for charging, but you want something to store your Lipos in. I use this old ammo tin. It's metal. I've took the seal out of the lid so that it's not airtight, so otherwise you're going to make it into a bomb. And that's where I store my Lipos. It just gives me a bit of peace of mind that if they do go off, it's going to contain that fire a little bit. But as a bare minimum, one of these Lipo bags, not very expensive, about £7 or £8 for an halfway decent one. I'll put a link in the description to where you can get one of those. Next thing that I'd say is the next and probably most important item for Lipo care is a decent charger. I can't stress this enough. I'm always telling people at my home site that a decent charger is worth its weight in gold. You cannot go wrong by getting a decent charger. This charger, I'll put a link in the description to where you can get a decent charger, but this is a full balance charger. They normally sell them again a lot in the RC world because they do use some big Lipo batteries for that. But you know, you can go very high on the cost of a charger, but for about £40 British pounds, you can get a very nice balanced charger which will do what you need it to do. So you definitely need one of those. That is vital, a decent balanced charger. Okay, now next up you'll want a mini voltmeter. Don't have to have one of these, but for the money that they cost, again, they're well worth it. One of these you can pick up on eBay. I'll put a link in the description for around about £3 to £4 British, and all you do is plug the balance lead in and it'll tell you the voltage per cell of your Lipo battery, and then you can monitor it on your game days. You don't even have to unplug the battery, you just plug the balance lead in and it'll tell you what the voltage is sitting at. We'll get on to why that's important in a minute. In this video, I'm not going to go into all the details of the difference between 2S and 3S and voltages and everything else, because I did that in the longer video that I did previously. We're just going to look at the bare minimum of what you want to keep yourself safe, keep your replica working well, and not have an unintentional fire. So, I'd say that those three things, vitally important for Lipo, for Kerr. So, with that out of the way, them are the three most important items. What are the do's of Lipo batteries? Well, do balance charge your Lipos. I recently encountered a case where somebody was using the incorrect charger, a charger that was designed for NIMH or NICAD batteries. Those chargers do not balance charge, and those batteries had puffed up. It's a dangerous situation. If you're using the wrong charger and you're not balance charging, you are entirely running the risk of permanently damaging the battery. That's a given. But mainly you're running the risk of that battery becoming unstable and you having a fire. And you certainly don't want to end up having a fire if you're charging in your house or charging in a building that you especially don't want to burn down. So do ensure that you are balance charging and that your charger is balance charging. Number 2, do store your Lipos safely. As I've mentioned, the bare minimum is one of these Lipo fire bags. Ideally you want something more substantial, but as a bare minimum you want something that would mitigate the risk if one of these batteries did, in the very rare chance, go bad and set fire. So do store your batteries safely. Number 3, do use one of these charging sacks or Lipo guard sacks when you're charging. Always put the battery in some sort of fireproof receptacle when you're charging. Don't put it on any flammable surfaces or anything like that when you're charging, because if one of these does go bad, it's 9 times out of 10 likely to go bad while it's being charged or while it's being drained, while it's in use in your replica. When there's load on the battery, it's likely to go, and when it's being charged, it's likely to go. Those are your 2 most common times that a battery is going to set fire. So whenever you're charging, do use a Lipo sack. And when you're transporting the battery, obviously if it's in your car or in a bag, you don't want it to set fire and burn everything else up. So always do transport and charge in a fire resistant container, or ideally one of these Lipo sacks or a Lipo safe. Always storage charge is the next one. Number 4 is do storage charge your Lipos. Now what I mean by that is if you're planning on not playing a game for a long time and your Lipos are going to be left for a while, then you want to put the Lipos into storage charge. Now a decent charger like this has a storage mode on it. Check your instructions on your particular charger, or my previous video that I did, as I say, that'll tell you exactly how to use the charger and how to put a battery in storage mode. And make sure that you put your batteries in storage mode. And what we mean by that is basically you charge each cell to 3.8 volts per cell. And that way the battery will be able to be stored for a lengthy amount of time without risk of it degrading, losing performance, and ultimately puffing up or potentially going bad and catching fire. So do put your batteries in storage mode. Now the next thing, number 5, is do get the correct size battery for the task that you're looking for it to do. If your particular replica has a lot of space for a battery, then go for the biggest battery you can fit in there. 2,200 milliamp hour is quite a large battery in airsoft. But I mean, obviously work within the constraints of what you've got. But the more milliamp hour that you have in your battery, the longer it's going to last and the less risk you have of over depleting that LiPo battery. So ensure that you're using the correct voltage, either 11.1 or 7.4, depending on what your particular replica is designed to run with. And also make sure that you have adequate capacity in the battery, which is your milliamp hour rating, mAh, and make sure that there is enough in there to cover you for the length of time that you're planning on being out in the field before you can replace the battery, and also to provide the necessary power to the replica that you're running. So that moves us on to number 6. Treat your Lipos with care. Do treat them with care. Treat them as a delicate item. And they are delicate items. They have what we call a soft case. If I take one of the batteries out of here, I can show you what I mean. Okay, now this is a 2200 milliamp hour 7.4 volt battery, but as you can see, if you can make that out on camera, it's got a clear coating on the outside, so you can see each of the 2 individual cells there, and they're only in a soft metal. It'd be easy to puncture this battery. Do take care of them. Do look after them as if they were a precious thing, and that way they're going to last you a long time and you're not going to run the risk of a fire. So do treat your batteries with care. And then finally, number 7, this is where the little voltmeter comes in here. Do check the batteries occasionally to ensure that 1, they're balanced, so each cell is roughly the same voltage, and 2, that you're not running the battery too low. So that's the do's. So that then leads us on to what you shouldn't do with a LiPo, which, as you can probably imagine, is pretty much the reverse of what we've just been discussing there. So the don'ts. So number 1, don't leave these batteries fully charged. It's a bit of a misconception sometimes that a battery is better being left fully charged. With LiPo batteries, that is not the case. You do not want to leave one of these batteries fully charged if you're going to be leaving it for any length of time. To be honest, when I come home from a game day, I put all my batteries in storage charge just in case, because it doesn't do them any harm to put them in storage charge, and then you can charge them up either the night before your game or the morning before you go, whenever you've got the time to do it. But do not leave them for any length of time fully charged. Number 2, don't pierce or damage the battery anyway. So don't allow any mechanical damage to affect the battery, which could cause it to vent, which is going to cause a fire, and obviously is going to damage your replica or whatever's around it, and it's going to damage your battery, which you'll have to buy a new one. So don't allow it to be punctured or shocked, dropped, or otherwise mechanically damaged. And as we mentioned before, don't let it drop below 3 volts per cell. If you let it drop below 3 volts per cell, you'll hear stories about being able to recover them, and yes, there are possible ways of recovering them. But as a main rule, you don't want to have to go down that route because you're running a risk of fire and permanent damage to the battery. It is going to become unstable if you drop it below 3 volts. That's the way to think. That's the mentality to have, that if you drop it below 3, the battery's unstable and you've permanently damaged it. So don't let it drop below 3 volts per cell. But ideally, don't let it drop below 3.5 volts per cell. Then you're giving yourself a bit of a cushion. 3.3 is a minimum, okay? So, number 4. Don't use puffed or hot batteries. Now what I mean by that, puffed would be evident. As you can see, this battery has a nice uniform squarish shape. If this was to puff up from the end profile, it'd look kind of round or oval. You'll know when they puff up, it will go all puffy. So don't use a battery that's puffed up. Once it's puffed up, that's the end of it. That battery's had its day. You need to take it to your local disposal centre and get rid of the battery safely. Don't use a puffed up battery. It's not worth the risk, especially if you put it on the charger and it's puffed up. It could start a fire in your home or wherever you're charging. And if you use it in your replica and it's puffed up and it's unstable and it does go bad, then you're running the risk of either burning yourself or setting fire to your replica as well. And like I said, I don't want to see anybody get hurt by these things. So don't use a puffed up battery. For the amount of money it costs for a replacement, you're better off replacing it. Now what I mean by don't use a hot battery, it's normal with most batteries to have a little bit of warmth when they're discharging. Obviously you're putting the battery under load. If it's working hard, it may get a little bit warm. It should not get warm or hot when it's charging on a LiPo battery. If you discover that you have a LiPo battery that's getting particularly hot when it's charging or really hot when it's in use, then discontinue the use of that battery. Either the battery that you're using is not capable of providing the power that's being drawn out of it and it's being run on its burst C rating permanently rather than continuous draw. That's going to damage the battery. It's going to permanently damage it. Again, it's going to potentially make it unstable. We're going to have fires, carnage, all the rest of it. You don't want any of that. So if the battery is getting hot, then it's had it, don't use it. And if it's puffed up, it's had it, don't use it. Okay. Now the next thing that we come to is don't short it out. Now that goes a little bit to what we said earlier about do treat them with care. Don't short these batteries out. If you were to cut these wires by accident, if they get pinched, if there's damage to the insulation, particularly if it's stored in a metal housing, if your replica is metal, then those surfaces are conductive. You've got the potential to short the battery, put a short on your replica as well. If they touch together, they're going to short. If you short these batteries out, then you are looking at a major potential for the battery to go bad, for it to go off, for it to swell, burn. Again, bad news, stuff you don't want. Okay, so moving on. Do not rely on LVC. And what we mean by LVC is low voltage cutoff. In a lot of replicas, specific to me, that a lot of you will have seen, is the G&G ARP9. Included with the MOSFET on that, it has something called LVC. A lot of MOSFETs include that now, and a lot of replicas come with MOSFETs that include that, and it's what we call low voltage cutoff. The idea of it is it protects your LiPo batteries. If you remember me saying about don't allow it to drop below 3 volts per cell, well, that's exactly what the LVC is designed to prevent. So if the low voltage cutoff detects that your battery has dropped to 3 volts per cell, it will prevent you firing any more through that replica. It will cut the power. When you pull the trigger, nothing is going to happen. Now, don't ultimately rely on that. You don't want to be running your batteries right down to the point of LVC every time, because they are relatively reliable, but you're putting a lot of faith that that small bit of microcircuitry is going to be able to monitor exactly that you are at 3 volts per cell, and it's going to allow it to get that low. Sometimes you can come across programmable LVC where you can set it at what you want, but as I say, I would much prefer to use this cheap device just to check the cells myself periodically, and when it gets to 3.3 volts, your LVC might still be allowing the gun to run. However, that's getting low. So don't rely on that, rely on checking it yourself, and when it gets to 3.3, 3.5 volts per cell, stop using the battery, swap it out for another one that's going to keep your batteries in tip-top condition. And the next one is don't use cheap chargers. Use a decent charger. I can't stress this enough. I know it seems like a boring item. Batteries seem pretty boring, but they're an immensely important part of your replica. They provide all the power. They're dangerous in the wrong hands, so a good charger is well worth it. And a charger allows you to charge with full control. That's what you want. So you can charge at the C rating that you want to charge at. It allows you to put them in storage mode, and also it's going to properly balance the individual cells with proper battery monitoring, and that's what you want. So a decent charger is an absolute must. Don't cheap out on your charger. Can't stress that enough. Make sure it's a balanced charger and that it's designed for charging LiPo batteries. With one of these chargers, this kind of thing is the only charger you'll need, because normally they'll charge an MH, NICAD, Life, Lipo and Lithium-Ion. So you can charge everything with them. And then the final one is don't charge at a higher current more than what the battery is rated at. Now again, I cover all of that in the longer video I did previously, just covering LiPo charging and battery care. So that's it. That's the do's and don'ts. Briefly, the very basic do's and don'ts of LiPo batteries. If you have any questions for me about them, then do drop a comment below. I'll be happy to get back to you on that one. You can also contact me on Facebook and Instagram as Rock Bottom Airsoft. You can check us out on there. There's loads of other stuff on there. And the final piece of advice I would give is, if you don't think you're going to be willing to take the cure with LiPo batteries that we've just discussed there as a bare minimum, then maybe LiPo batteries aren't for yourself. The options you have is NIMH. They're still absolutely fine. They don't put out as much power. They don't come in a smaller package. But you know, if they work for you, you do not need to take as much care with a NIMH battery as you do with a LiPo. And then the other option, which is a bit more pricey, is lithium-ion. Lithium-ion has some of the advantages of LiPo, all the advantages of NIMH, in that you don't need to take as much care. You still need to balance charge them, but they aren't as easy to go bad as a LiPo is if you mistreat them. So them are your options. I hope this has been helpful. I hope you've found it interesting, and I hope you liked the video. If you do like it, then do please drop a like on it. Otherwise, thank you very much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one.